Hey, my friends, this is The Art of Prepping. Hope everyone's doing great. I like to listen to the radio from time to time. Recently, though, I have not been listening to the radio at all, but for a number of years now, like 20 plus years, I pretty consistently listen to the radio. And I like AM radio. It's not that I'm against like music per se, but I like talk radio basically. And for those who don't live in the US, AM is mostly talk radio. Yes, there are a few channels that have music, but FM is kind of where you go typically to get music. And of course, there's also some various talk shows on FM as well. So you get both, both types of programming, on AM and FM. But for the most part, AM is more talk show. And on the weekends, I love to listen to various financial advisors. I can't say that I agree with much of what they say, in my opinion, I just disagree with them. But sometimes I do agree. And I just like to kind of make my own choices, and make my own thoughts on the matter. I like to come to my own conclusions is what I'm trying to say. And so I like to listen to a bunch of different people with different ideologies, philosophies, approaches. And yeah, I make up my own mind. And one of the things that I constantly hear about over all these years, it comes up all the time, not every weekend, but at least once a month. And that is, are you putting together a reasonable emergency fund? One that really is going to be enough for you if you really needed it. There's a lot of people I know and a lot of people I hear on the radio that call in and they're like, yeah, I got $1,000 in my savings account that they use as like part of their emergency fund. Or that could be the entire emergency fund, and a lot of the advisors, they're just holding back. You can even hear them like trying to hold back their laughter because anymore, like $1,000 here in the U.S., you can spend that in one day on medical bills, on a car repair. I mean, you're going to have to do better than that. Now, I applaud anyone who's trying. So, I'm not putting anybody down here, but I'm just saying, if you think that that's all you need is just $1,000 or $2,000 or a week or two of expenses, you might want to stop and pause a moment and really think this through. Now, every financial advisor, it sounds like out there, has their own philosophy on this. And typically they have very similar viewpoints, but this is just what I've seen over all the years. Most financial advisors, they recommend between 3 to 6 months of all expenses to be saved up in your emergency fund. And that sounds pretty good on the surface. But this is the problem. You and I know that it can take sometimes more than 3 to 6 months to find a job if you get laid off. You and I know that if you get injured and you don't have insurance, and a lot of people don't have insurance, so this is not, really some kind of bizarre thought here. This is based in reality. If you're down and out for months and months trying to recuperate from some type of injury, you may run out of money if you only have 3 to 6 months put back. And if you look at ever since like 1945, the average duration of a recession here in the U.S. is 10 months. 10 months. Do you have the ability to weather that? At the very beginning of that recession, you may get laid off, may not be able to find a job the whole time. Maybe you have a business and the recession just completely destroys your sales and you have basically no income. You can't even float your shop. Well, if you have an emergency fund for longer than the recession, then you might be able to survive. And that's where it comes to my thought on this. And I'm not like the only one that thinks like this. Okay. This is just what I've come up with, regardless of what other people think. But I've used a lot of data points to come to this conclusion. And that is a 1-year emergency fund makes the most sense. You can weather most recessions. You can weather most injuries, at least injuries that you can recover from, in a reasonable time frame. You can typically find a job within 1 year. For most people, it just takes a few months. But once again, maybe it's in the middle of a really bad recession. Maybe there's a lot of other things going on as well. So I'm just here to tell you that while the advice of 3 to 6 months put back into an emergency fund being recommended by financial gurus, financial advisors across the board, it's not a bad bit of advice, but it just may not be enough to, put back to really take care of your needs. So I'm just here to tell you that's what I've been thinking about, and I just wanted to share that. Do with what you please. But, think about this. It's difficult, I understand, to even save a few months worth of income. I get that as well, because I know I'm going to get the messages like I did last time. I talked about this subject a while back, and there were people like, hey, man, I live in the real world and I don't make that much money. It's hard enough to put back even a few weeks worth of expenses a year, much less, months worth. And so this is something that you may work on over time. I'm not saying you need to accomplish this in 1 year even. You may take several years to try to save up. It can take a while to save a whole year's worth of expenses, living expenses. But start working on it now. I mean, why not? And so this is something that when we look at being prepared, it's a pretty critical element to the whole planning system that we have, right? So it's not just like we have, our food and water, which are very important, and have other things as well, all those other categories. But if you're not able to pay bills, if you're not able to put a roof over your head and protect yourself from the elements and keep yourself off the street, and if you're not able to maintain some type of transportation, I know there are some people who don't have vehicles, that they just use public transportation, so that's fine. But, from my knowledge, you still have to pay for that. I mean, I don't think it's all free. It may be very affordable, but you still have to, so put money back for that. But just think about all those things. Think about all those things that cost money. And we don't sometimes think about them very, specifically when we have a job. When we have money coming in every week or two, we're not really thinking about all the details. But you are going to be faced with all those details when you have no money coming in. So just really be aware of your budget. And that's really the other part of this whole, commentary here, I guess, is that to do a real budget, sit down and be completely honest with yourself and really just look at what's going on with your finances and how much do you really even need to save per week or per month, because that's a big problem. Some people say, well, I could just do a bare bones budget and I only need a few $100s a week. And that's not probably going to be enough. Let's just be honest. And so, yeah, when you budget for your emergency fund, you may not, put in $100 a month for clothes and things like that. You might just look at your essentials, but be honest about those essentials, though. Don't just round down and say, if I had to, I could just eat on $15 a week for food. And, honestly, you're not going to probably do that. And they're just not. You're not going to literally just live off of beans and rice. So just be honest with yourself and say, okay, I need a reasonable budget for food, a reasonable budget for, electricity and for gasoline for your car. And that, repairs are going to be necessary at some point, or just general maintenance of your house and vehicles. So make sure that that's put in there. So, just be reasonable about it. And most of you guys are very reasonable people. So you know how to do all this. It's just a matter of doing it. And that's why I do a lot of these very simple videos, is because a lot of people, I see this firsthand. I see it all the time, that people don't do the simple things. The simple things, and it's most of preparedness is just little things. It's a lot of little things. And it adds up, though. It makes a real difference when you have it all together. But if you don't have it together, well, then you just don't have the capability to do certain things. And life can be very difficult because of that. So thanks for checking out my video. You guys take care.